Hello, welcome to the January 9th, 2026 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be not possible. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question, we will go through all the questions chronologically as asked. So if we could avoid asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. And when asking questions, it's always helpful if you could specify which version of Steinberg software you're running. So if it's Cubase, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, the version numbers such as Cubase 13, 14, 15, your operating system. We should have an index of all of the topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. So you could quickly navigate to those parts of the video. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been submitted to, that have been asked in other live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that wonderful site. I believe we're over 43,000 topics. We have two people that serve as moderators on the live stream. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better environment. So we want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude and to H&K for their efforts. We'll also give a duly noted expression of gratitude for Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord. It's a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. So if you're looking for links, tutorials, downloads, lots of great stuff there. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so we have Cello 9894 saying hi. You see Tim K joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat buddy is waving a paw hello to my cat Steven, who I think is asleep upstairs today. And Mark Raven's dog Stella and other pets that are nearby. All right, we have Ayash67 joining from Jordan. Thanks for being online with us today. We see Stefan from Sweden. We have Claes Olsen joining from Malmo, Sweden. We see Parabot 2 as well. VS Terra Nova joining from Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. Always great to see Jazz Dude. We have Raw Justice Hip Hop, who's lucky number 7 on the like button. He's checking in from Capitol Heights, Maryland, just across the river from me. Thanks for joining us. We have Datho checking in from Fayetteville, Arkansas. And we see John Barry from the English Riviera. Michael Marshall joining from Somerset, UK. And so we have Soren from Sweden. We have Balsa joining from Montenegro. Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo, California. Benny joining from Sweden. Great to see Val as Y42 joining from Vienna. All right. We have Greedo Kenobi just sending greetings to everyone. We see Gareth on earlier than usual. Great to see you on. Uno Memento joining from Finland, where it's minus 24 degrees Celsius. Sounds pretty cold. All right, Ayesh67 asks, thanks, Greg. What's the correct way to reset a project while keeping the same instruments but removing all events? So if you wanted to remove all the events, what I would do is probably the simplest way to do it is just to go to your file menu and let's go to import tracks from project. So I will select a quick project here. So I'm going to just open up a project. So when we do the import tracks from project, I could now select all of the tracks. So this would give me all of the track settings, plugins, and then we could choose which data is actually imported as we do this. So I'm going to uncheck events and parts, and I probably don't need to actually have automation. So now when I start a project, I can now just come right over here, and we could just open up that particular project. So again, just come to import tracks from project, select your project, select all, and then as you hit OK, then you have all of the settings, but nothing is actually carried directly over. So again, if I want to do a different project, or is it probably the same project there, I will come over to import tracks from project, and that's all you have to do. All right. All right, so we see Val just wishing everyone a Happy New Year, happy to be back, and says he's happy to be back on a live stream. Hope everyone had a great holiday season, and that we're not under 15 centimeters of snow like they are in Vienna. Yeah, I saw some friends from some of my Steinberg colleagues posting snow pictures. It doesn't rain too much in doesn't snow too much in Hamburg. All right, so we see Gareth is streaming from Bilbao in Spain. We have Boy King Toot, Rutut saying hi from Zimbabwe. Greedo Kenobi is joining again from Netherlands. Right. All right, so we see Vince joining from Flyvee. We see just comments on people's usernames changing. All right, so we see Val just says a question. Since Cubase 15, when I put tracks in a folder, they all get a certain color. I want them to keep the color they had. Is this a bug? All right, so let's come over here. Let's just do new project. Add a few audio tracks. Let's add a folder track. All right, and let's make our folder track like a really obvious color. Okay, so now when I come over, I drag these particular tracks into the folder. We can see that these tracks will assume the color of the folder. So I believe it's just a preference that was introduced in 15. Where it says if we go under event, your preferences or settings, under event display folders, it says apply color of folder track automatically. So if you say never, again, we could come over here. So now if I add a number of audio tracks, so these will all be my different colors, and at that point, when we select these colors, when you move them into the folder, they will retain the original colors. So again, go to Cubase, to your preferences, to event display, folders, and you'll have a preference for apply color of folder track automatically. Just adjust that, and then you should be all set. Okay, so we see Rick from Bratman Studio on. He's enjoying hot oatmeal and cinnamon toast. I had some oatmeal for lunch as well. My lunch breakfast. All right. All right. So yes, we are happy, Gareth, that you have made it on time. It's always great to see you on. All right, Eric Daniel Ray asks, hey, I'm having a problem of echo in my headphones in Cubase 15. Can you help me? So usually when you have kind of a, so it's probably going to be a latency issue, that is the echo, and it could be more pronounced in headphones. So the first thing, your latency can come from a couple of different sources. So one, if you go to like your studio menu to studio setup, select your audio interface here, and then you'll see a buffer size. So you could adjust the buffer size directly there. That will lower the latency. So that's one thing. One aspect that causes latency is the buffer size of your audio interface. The second aspect that can increase latency is going to be plugins. So if we have particular plugins, let's say on this track I'm recording and we have a multi-band compressor on our vocal track, and we all go, okay, this sounds amazing. But sometimes plugins that need to look ahead for particular processing may we could think of it as like the plugin tax for some like heavy duty plugins can be that there's going to be increased latency. So the plugin itself can impose latency. So if we look at this, and we could actually, if we go to your sections, we could actually see just a latency. And at this point, so if I added another plugin, let's say I'll add a vocal chain, is kind of a high latency plugin. So we can see that now we're going to have a delay because of the plugins on this track of 359.3 milliseconds. So if we click here, we can see exactly what the latency is in samples in milliseconds caused by each plugin. Now, one quick way of doing this is if you'll see this little button here in the bottom left-hand corner of the transport. And what we could do is just come over directly to this particular button. And as we do that, we could say, okay, I'm going to have this particular track. And what this could do is actually, we could set a threshold, and that will bypass plugins that are causing latency. So just be aware that, there are plugins that could cause latency. To kind of alleviate that, we could just click on the delay compensation button, and that would temporarily bypass kind of, latent plugins. So you could do that. So try hitting, if you're hearing, a delay, like when you're recording especially, try, do the constraint delay compensation, or adjust your buffer size on your audio interface, and then that should alleviate the latency for you. All right. Okay. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so Balsa asks, how to include Cubase's loops and samples in MediaBay F5 search, not in the right zone media, but in the separate MediaBay window. All right, so once we come over here, they are kind of just included, so you may not see it with the icons, but as we come over here, we can say, okay, I want to, and we'll look under VST sound. So once we see our VST sound at this point, all right, now let's look under maybe factory content, but or I think it's just going to show up as under VST sound. So all of the loops, so I will come over here. Let's just say we're looking for all files. So as I say, okay, I'm looking for kick drum, so all of these, let's say, let's look for a particular loop name here. So let's say vocals underscore 108. So we will now come right over here into MediaBay, and let's say and now we can see that all of the different presets will be just laid out for us right here. So they all will show up in MediaBay. You may not see kind of the icons for them within the full MediaBay, but all of the loops and content are still there, kind of ready to go. All right, just check my... All right, next question. Okay, so we see from Emerge Family, it says, I want to give up Ableton for Cubase. So it's probably a good choice, and we'd love to have you and help you get up to speed on your Cubase here. All right, so we have Train 43 joining, a fellow Virginian joining from Suffolk, Virginia. So, oh, great to see you on, Glenn. It's probably a new name. Good to see you back. Emerge Family is just sending love from Nepal. Thanks for joining us. Must be the middle of the night. AL Recording Studio says hello from Switzerland. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to route the ASIO output from Cubase directly to the computer audio, example using MS Teams or something similar? So a lot of times when we are, it could depend on your audio interface. So let's say if I want to come over, let's see why, let me just check my, sure why I'm not getting audio. Let me just, bear with me for a second. All right, so let's just check my, Hang on just 1 second. Let me just check. Seems like it should be going to my, all right, so let me get the question answered. So depending on your audio interface, so a lot of audio interfaces may have a loopback system. So if I wanted to come over here, so when I see my audio interface here, so I have my Steinberg UR24C. So I'm going to be using that. So that this is what I'm going to use for my Cubase, but we also have a Steinberg UR24C streaming. So that would take the audio from my UR24C, and then I could use that as the available input of something like Microsoft Teams. So we could, just simply utilize that. Now, if you don't have a solution for that, if your audio interface doesn't do that, what you could do is open up, and Steinberg has a free program called MixKey. And what we could do is take the audio out from Cubase, and we could go into kind of like your setup here. So we can say, okay, I want to take my audio out of Cubase and then use MixKey as a way to feed the audio from multiple sources, like a web program, your Cubase, and then you could feed the MixKey output to your audio directly inside of Microsoft Teams or Zoom. So check out MixKey, is a great utility for that. It's currently in kind of public beta. It is free, so I would recommend kind of jumping on it. And it's a great solution for that. All right, so we had Tony Trunzo joining. All right, Michael Marshall just says, I see VST Connect is updated. Can you tell us about improvements? So I don't think that I wasn't aware of a particular update for VST Connect. So if anything, it might be just some maintenance, maybe some further optimizations for, later operating systems, but I wasn't aware of a particular update with that, but I could look into it and maybe give you a better answer on Tuesday's live stream. All right, so we see Michael Teams joining from Weatherford, Texas. All right, so we see Val just says, thanks, Greg. That was the exact thing. Somehow this setting alone didn't transfer from my 14 to 15, but so far loving 15 so much. And that preference with the folder colors, I think that's new inside of Cubase 15. So that's probably why it may not have translated over for you. All right. All right, Michael Teams back from vacation and on fire with ice cream distribution. Jazz Dudes received 1 gallon of Mango Supreme ice cream. All right, Uno Memento wants everyone to whack the like button. All right, so we see Balsa just says, in the project window mix console, is there a visual cue in the track to convey that the channel strip effect is in use? Okay, so let me just... Sure why my audio isn't functioning. I'm going to just do a quick audio test to my end. Bear with me 1 minute. I can plug some headphones into console. All right, so I may just restart my Cubase here real quick. Sorry about that. See if I get the audio interface to wake up. My apologies for that. I usually test it before. All right, let me see if I could reroute my audio out to a different device here real quick. Apologies. Maybe it's my Yamaha mixer that's acting up. All right, I'll try going back. Sorry about this. All right, might be my mixer that's acting up, but let me just try to go on. Okay. Sorry about that. So we may not have computer audio today. We'll try to get through it. All right, so how to know if a channel strip is in use? All right, so when we want to come over here, so let's go ahead and we'll just go to like a channel strip here. Let's activate. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will come over here. Let's get to our setup sections, make sure we have our channel strip enabled. All right, so as we click on, let's see, so here we can see this little blue indication, and this would indicate that the channel strip is being used on this, so we could turn it off or on. But with tracks that don't have the channel strip, we could visually look at and see if this icon is like more of the, if we're using the colors, if they are actually, once we do this, if we see that kind of non-white in color, that would indicate that that particular channel strip. So if we come to this channel and I activate something in the channel strip, we can see that when we see this little icon here, that would indicate that the channel strip is being used. And if we go to the channel strip, we could see directly here. Now looking at this on our project window, as let's come to our sections here, make sure we have our channel strip turned on. All right. So as we would select different channels here, we could, as we do this, we could see that same indication. So even if it's closed, just kind of looking here, that would indicate that like the EQs or channel strip is actively being used on that particular channel. Okay, so we see from Matt Elston, hey Greg, Cubase 15 Pro, please can you show how to quickly make an audio kick drum track that has slightly out timing to be quantized with the project track tempo, please? All right, let me see if I could quickly switch out my audio interface. Bear with me just a minute. I'm going to try to switch out the audio interface so we could hear this. Hang on. All right, so just connect new audio interface. Let's see if they get this to work. Maybe it could be my mixer that I use. All right, let me see if I could switch out in. Check, check, check. All right, let me see if, sorry if we had audio that wasn't working for that. All right, so hopefully you can hear me now. Apologize for all the issues that. All right. Okay, so the question that we just had was about writing CC1. We go to F6 in the settings, change the reduction level from 50 to 10%, but it doesn't work. So as I was just mentioning before, when we do CC data, the CC data is going to be in a particular part. So let's come over here. I'm just going to write CC data into this particular event. So as I record directly in, so this is when we write MIDI CC1 data in, we could just see that when we do this, that we could say, okay, we're going to look at our modulation data, and Cubase will kind of interpolate between the different automation data right there, but it is doing a reduction. If you wanted to, get rid of particular points, you could say, okay, like I just want that data here, is you could just simply, draw in your 2 points, and if we choose to have the MIDI CC data, and we can say, okay, let's do a ramp. But, we can see that as we write in CC data that it will automatically be carried over. But, this is for CC data. And when we look at our particular project window here, and we go to the automation panel, this is going to be more when we go to the reduction here in the settings. At that point, it's, when we do our reduction, that's not going to be for MIDI CC data that's on the particular part. But, always go by what it sounds like and not what it looks like for CC data. Because something may look like there's a lot of data, but then you could just simply edit it as needed. All right. All right, so I just see from Soren says, Greg, I never got around to send you a brain cramp email question. Says, have you checked if it's possible to monitor record with the playback processing at WaveLab? So I didn't get a chance to do that. So, but I will make a note to do it for Tuesday's live stream. All right. All right, so we have Sue checking in from Mojave, Arizona. Great to see you on. It's wonderful having you on the last Zoom social meetup. All right, so we just see how is the performance of Cubase 15 Pro on a MacBook Pro 2025 M4 Max, 48 gigs of RAM. So Cubase will, is the, one of the most efficient programs for utilizing all of the CPU cores. So, I'm running in, you can get a pretty good idea. I have 64 gigs of RAM, but I have an M4 Max, so that's the same processor that I'm running. So you'll have wonderful performance. So we see better performance in the MacBook 2019 i9 with 32 gigs of RAM. Yeah, you'll see a significant performance boost with that. All right, Balsa asks, hi Greg, can you explain cases of all the import check boxes in the export audio mixdown window? Should they all be on or off when rendering a final mixed song? All right, so let's come over here. And so let's say we go to our file, to our export audio mixdown. So let's see where the import options are. There's maybe the insert options. So I would say if you're doing, if you are doing, if you want markers to be, if it's the insert functions, I think it's the import, but maybe it's the insert function. So this will allow you to put like your name, the name of the song in the file. You could also include markers and also additional metadata like genre and different aspects like that, for tagging services. I would probably leave those 3 on. When you're using the extensible or the RF64, these could be for larger audio files that exceed 2 gigabytes. So probably if you're doing a single master, you may not need to worry about those. So if it's for these 3 items, I would just use kind of the first 3. The default settings, I think, are a great place to start with. All right. All right, so we see John Costigan joining from Wisconsin. All right, MBL 7946 says a lot of K-pop and J-pop producers use Cubase. Cubase is the most favorable DAW in Korea and Japan. Yeah, it's very popular there. Yeah, and it's interesting, like Teddy Riley does a ton of K-pop stuff now, so. All right. All right. This Ninja Scared asks, can we add MIDI effects to the drum tracks, please, in any future updated Cubase? Let's give it a shot here. So let's say I'll do a new pattern. Okay. Let me just do a new project here, just clean this up. So let's add a drum track. Okay, so I will just come over here. Let's go to our pattern editor. We'll put in just a simple all right, so let's come over here to like our MIDI inserts, and we can come over here. Let's put in like a MIDI delay, MIDI echo. All right, so let's see if we put this into our project window. So I'm going to drag this into the project window. And now I'll see if we can. All right. Let's see if we convert this all to MIDI. Doesn't seem like it's working on the drum machine. I'll pass that along and see if we get that, but it seems like it should work if it's doing, if it's a MIDI data that is going along there. So I'll pass that along. Thanks for letting us know. All right. All right. Okay, reading through comments. Sorry, I had my mic wasn't set up. All right, just catching up on comments. Sorry about the audio difficulties. Okay, still reading through comments here. All right, Beverly Beatty asks, Greg, can you please give us a setup of multiple Vox going into a group channel / bus where one instance of an effects feeds the entire group? Yeah, so let's go ahead and show you a quick case of this, Beverly. Thanks for joining us. I believe from Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so let's say in this example, I'm going to have a lot of background vocals. And I believe that all of these background vocals are going to be sent. Let's see if I open up a different instance of this project here. Or just check my audio connections.
A new place, felt my fears all fly away. Don't it make you feel good? Knowing that somebody loves you.
All right, so we have all these background vocals.
Don't it make you feel good?
All right, so what we could do is I'm just going to take like all of these tracks and we'll route the particular tracks. Let me just turn off one quick preference. All right. And we could route these, and these may already be routed to a group, but I'll do it again here. So we're going to take all my background vocals. I'm going to right click. We go to add track, and I'm going to add a group track to the selected tracks. So once we do this, and we'll call this our vocal group. All right, so let me just see if we have on the tracks now, if we have send. Okay. So all these tracks are now being fed into this vocal group.
give you their heart.
And then on this particular vocal group, what I could do is I could have a send or an insert.
Just the way you are. Don't make you
So we want to take all the background vocals, and I could just put an insert, and we'll just put a reverb.
feel good knowing that somebody loves you. Don't make you feel good knowing that somebody wants to give
And I'll adjust my
you their
mix.
heart. Somebody just the way you are. Don't make you
And let's add
feel good.
a delay as well.
Knowing that somebody loves you. Somebody loves you. Loves you. Loves you. Loves you.
And let me just adjust like your feedback down. So now as we do this, all of these tracks
Make you feel good. Knowing that
are now being routed. So select all the background vocals. And then right click, and we want to say add group track. And then on that particular group track, we can come over here, and as inserts or sends, you could just have different effects processing on them, just like that. Okay, so we have a question from Sue. Just says, if I can have only one tempo track which applies to all tracks, how can I exclude some tracks and have others work at a different tempo? Okay, so let's just do new project here. Okay, so let's say we want to have, just find, all right. All right, so these tracks I'm going to have in musical mode. Okay, so these will automatically kind of follow our tempo. So we'll place all these tracks into musical mode, and now I can, so we play this with our click track. All right, so those are working at 120 beats a minute. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these tracks and put the track itself into, and let's go ahead and I'll throw a drum loop in so we have that as a reference. Okay. So now we'll come over here. So we'll have our drum loop at 100 and so we're playing everything in sync at 100 and 120 beats a minute. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to take my drum track here, and we see this track classification type. So I want to put this from a musical time base to a linear time base. And now I'm going to change my tempo from 120 to 100. So now when I hit play, these tracks are slowed down. And then we could also, for like these particular tracks, I will just choose for them not to be in musical mode. So these are now playing at their original tempo. But now it's close, so I'm going to just change it to 140. So now these tracks are staying in because this particular track is in musical mode, this will stay in the same bar and beat position. This one will stay in the same time position. Now, another thing that you could do is just come over here. So let's say we have these in sync. We could also just come here to the lock position. So we say, just see if we have, okay, so if you right click, there is a lock control. So we could also just come over here and just say, okay, we want to lock the position and the length of these. So now, like this track, these events are in musical mode. And we'll say that these tracks are not in musical mode, or we could still put them in musical mode here. So as I change my tempo, so this way we could have these tracks kind of stay in their same exact position. So, so if we want to, have those tracks stay at their time position, we would just put the particular event, the track itself, into linear mode, and then as tempo changes, these will play back at the same tempo. So experiment with musical mode, and that will allow you to keep the positions at their bar beat position as we are as we change tempos, and then once we have in linear mode, they will stay at their time positions when you change tempo. All right, so we see from Vince, it says, should I wait for Splice to release an update to Cubase Pro 15 or just use 14 for a bit until they release? Yeah, I mean, you could check. I haven't heard back from colleagues on my end, but if you want to, I mean, you could check with Splice when they're going to be offering it as well. All right, so we see Sable. It says I still haven't installed my upgraded 14 Pro to 15 Pro. It's feeling dejected. You should make it happy and do it today before the weekend starts. All right. Beverly asks also if you could show us how to ensure the Vox right above the music and not get lost with mix. All right. Says Beverly from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So what I would probably do, so every mix could be a little different. So arrangements can make a big deal with that, but let's come over here to something that's a pretty big mix. So lots of tracks going on in this project here. So drums, percussion.
Used to be long ago, we could see a future grow together all the time. Hand in hand, walking tall, stepping over every wall and standing in a way.
So a lot of times, sometimes, just a little judicious EQ.
Easy to love.
So just like an extreme amount.
Keep all those promises we made.
And one of the things that's like really helpful if you know like the key of the song is just to kind of come over here, because you often want to boost the particular frequencies that match musically what's going on. So you can see that you could have kind of like your frequency adjustment, and you could see right here the particular values in frequency, like which is represented in hertz, which is like the vibrations per second. But you could also just double click there and say, okay, we're in a key of G. So you can say, okay, I want to emphasize frequencies around G4 or G5. And you could just come over here and type in the notes. So, so that's something that is,
There was no way we could know.
so even,
Will we ever understand the way that things would go?
and, just doing a little bit of compression,
Can you feel it now? Was it meant
and
to
that can make
be?
everything just a little more even. So if you have notes that are like louder and softer,
Now that we've been apart, do you feel it in your heart? Can we really stay in love forever? Remember this love. Don't let it go.
so, like the thing that a lot of people miss is like, the arrangement. Make sure you don't have like, 4 synths that are in the same frequency range as the vocal. Give it kind of a cradle, if you will. Think of the song as the foundation and a cradle to kind of lift the vocal up, and make sure you don't have stuff conflicting with that. Use kind of smart, figure out what the key of the song is and the EQ based on the key, and then just a little bit of, just a little bit of compression. I wouldn't go like super heavy on compression because you'll lose kind of natural dynamics, but you want to kind of make sure that you're not, that when you're boosting kind of the level of the vocal, that, it's not going to be clipping, and that it'll be kind of regulated so that you don't have to do like tons of automation on a particular track. So the compressor can really alleviate that, so you don't have to do as much kind of hand holding and like really detailed automation. So give that a try, Beverly. Right. Right. All right, so you see also from Beverly says, I write electronic dance music and sometimes the Vox sync in the mix with all the drums and synths. Maybe show simple sidechain setup, allow Vox to shine through. I may have a project that could show that. Let me just see if it's in my recent. And another technique could be to utilize is just to utilize the like panning as well. So let's go ahead and just take a listen to this here. Right, so say as we're so say we have all right, so say we have something like that. One of the things that you could do is, let's say I want to come over here, let's put a compressor on this. So let's come over here and we'll show you kind of like some basic side chaining. So we'll say, okay, let's put just like the standard compressor, and we'll activate the side chain. And the track that we want to feed the side chain will be our lead Vox. So now when we have the vocal come in, go to my... So at that point, you could just have, when this vocal kicks in, that vocal is feeding kind of the synthesizer down. Kind of extreme example. And let's say, like in that case, we wanted to make the release really long. So you could do stuff like that. And also, if you wanted to use another tool that could be used for this is just doing like the, if you get to the EQ to frequency, to come over here, and here you could have an EQ on particular frequencies, but you could say, I really want this kind of panned, not as just a stereo EQ, but you could also just, if we come over, I'm going to take this and let's make it into like a stereo track, and now we open up. We could say I want to EQ kind of the left and right frequencies separately. So you could do stuff like that and leave kind of more space in the center of the panning. So, you could pan your synths kind of, like far in the left and right channels, and then have your vocal like, sitting, directly in the center part of the panning spectrum as well. Right, so we see Jazz Dude says the MIDI echo works with the drum machine, so I'll check that out. All right, so we have Conscious Power. Just says, hi Greg, how's it doing? How's your festive season? So it was great. Got to have a little bit of downtime, spend a lot of time with family. All right, Brian Corvera 9684 asks, how can I add time signature change in between bars? All right, so a bar is going to be the time signature change. So, so if we wanted to add a time signature change between bars, so when we define a time signature, that's going to be the time signature for the bar. So I'm going to add a signature track here. Okay, so as we come over here, let's say we're in 4/4. All right, so this is indicating that this measure is going to have four beats, and a quarter note gets the beat. So if I want to do a time signature change, let's say on beat 2, if I want a time signature change here to go to 3/4, so, we can only put the time signature changes kind of on the particular bar. So as we want to, again, come over here, because that, because the bar is defined for our different key signatures. So let's say we'll come over here. All right, so we say, okay, so if we want this to be 3/4, so we say, okay, I come here and I want this to be 3/4 time. Okay, so right now, because we've defined this as 4/4, and let's say at this point I want this to be 5/4. All right, so this is again indicating that we have this bar. So when we define the time signature is defined for the entire bar. So if you want a time signature change here of 3/4, starting like right at the third beat in the measure in the middle of the bar, what you have to do is just simply come over here and the bar before, say 3/4. Then you could have your time signature change in the middle. So time signatures by their nature will always define a full measure. So we don't define a half measure, we would just adjust the time signature. So if we go back to 4/4 here, okay, we're fine. And then if we want a 5/4 to start right here at the measure of, beat 6 or measure 6, beat 2, if we want a 5/4, what we would do is make this a 5/4 measure. So we're going to leave so we say, okay, right there, I want that to start a 5/4, so all we would have to do is just say, okay, adjust this particular timing. So we could say, okay, I want to do 4/4, a 5/4. I could say, okay, or this measure, I want to do a 1/4, and then come over here and do a 5/4. So, the signature is not going to be in between a measure. You just have to accommodate the time signature changes so that it fits, because the time signature is by its nature defining a full measure. So you may have to adjust the time signature to get the time signature you want to go in the middle of a bar, but we do that by adjusting the time signature of the previous bar. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so you see David M's is back for another year of Cubasing. All right. All right. Okay, reading through comments. Okay. Okay, reading through comments still. Okay, so I think we are at the end of questions. I know we had a couple questions that were mailed in, so let me get those. I know we probably lost people during our transition. All right, so we had a question. When should I use pre and post fader effect sends? All right, so, and there's, they're just kind of different behaviors, so it doesn't really matter like when we use the particular vocals. So let's see if I still, let me import a track from a project. All right, so just okay, so let's say we want to take this particular file here and work with pre and post fader send. So let's say,
Used to be long ago, we could see a future grow together all the time.
okay, so I'm gonna just come right over here and let's add an effect track to this particular file. So let's add, let's say, a reverb. This is often where it's going to be used. All right, so say Revelation. All right, so now we're going to have.
Used to be long ago, we could see a future grow together all the time.
All right, so when we have kind of pre and post fader, this could allow us to kind of keep the reverb level at the same when we are adjusting our fader, or we could attenuate the reverb. So let's say right now, and we could switch pre and post fader by just simply coming right over here and right clicking, and then we can say, right now we're in post fader. So while we do this, as I'm listening to the file,
used to be long ago, we could see a future grow together.
that now this isn't, since we're post fader,
Walking tall, stepping on,
if I take the volume all the way down, we don't hear the reverb.
Easy to keep all those promises.
So let's say we move it to pre-fader. So now as I drop the volume, now we can hear just a reverb. So when we have pre-fader, we're not actually, the level of the track, the source that's feeding it, does not have an impact. So if we always want that to have the same exact level with the reverb, regardless of where the fader is, we would put it to pre-fader. If we want to be able to, as we listen to it, so again, now that we're pre-fader, the fader doesn't have any impact on the gain structure of the effect. So, but if we move it to post-fader, as we come, we hear how that as the fader goes down, so does the reverb on that source. So that's what the pre and post fader. So you can see kind of the different colors. So again, when we see pre-fader, it's going to be more kind of an aqua, bluish, greenish, and post-fader would be kind of orange. So usually post-fader is the default behavior, but I think you could change it in preferences. All right, let me jump back, see if we have. All right. Okay, so we see from Sable just says, please demonstrate side chaining for lead and background vocals. Thanks. Okay. I'll revert to this quickly. All right, so let's take our vocals here. Or I'll use a different song. It might be easier to hear.
Seventh grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
All right, so let's take our lead vocal, and then we have background vocals here. Okay, so we'll now...
The day we first met, that was a long, long time. So in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
All right, so I'm going to take all of the background vocals here, and we're going to assign these. I'm going to send these background vocals to a group. So we'll say group track to just select it, and we'll call this background Vox. Okay, so as we just kind of play this little part here.
In love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
All right, so let's say as we do our background Vox, we will increase our background vocals here, the bus, so we listen to it.
You. Just like a long, long time ago.
So I could just go directly to the group channel, and let's put just a compressor on. And then we're going to activate the sidechain. So we'll say we want our lead vocal. So when the lead vocal comes in, this will automatically be the input for the compressor that's on our group channel. So let's come over here. We'll listen to it now. We'll open up the compressor.
So in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
All right, and let me just send a little more of the send here. And now we can have those background vocals compressed.
Love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
So let's compress it a little more.
Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
So that's why. So just kind of take your background vocals, send it to a group, and now as we come over here, open up the sidechain. We want to just make sure that the sidechain is there.
You, just like a long, long time ago.
So then when the lead vocal comes in, all the background vocals can be compressed, again giving that cradle for the lead vocal. Okay. All right, so we see from Michael Teams, it says, howdy Greg, we upgraded Jeff to Cubase 15, but some of the songs from Cubase 6 did not find the MIDI drums. What do you think? It could be, let me know if it's not finding the instrument, because I think it might have been, I don't remember what version, Groove Agent, it used to be, it might have been at 7 or 8 where we had Groove Agent SE versus Groove Agent 1. So most of the kits, so if you could, Michael, if you could let us know what actual instrument was being used for the projects in Cubase 6. So it could be maybe a Groove Agent 1. So if it's Groove Agent 1, all those kits have migrated into Groove Agent SE. So when we go to Groove Agent, let's go ahead and add a Groove Agent track. We'll come to Instrument. So we'll choose a Groove Agent SE. And when you go to the kits, part of the standard installation here, you'll see the Groove Agent 1 kits here. So these are all from, so if it was using Groove Agent 1, all of the kits are directly inside. But let me know if, what particular instrument was being used. So if it was like an early instrument that's, worked on 32-bit version of, Cubase 6, and that it doesn't exist in contemporary, host applications, then you might have to change that. But if it's Groove Agent 1, all the kits will load up directly into Groove Agent SE, but it may not trigger, it may not do it automatically. So, but you could, again, go to the Groove Agent SE or Groove Agent 1 kits and load them into Groove Agent SE. So you think of the Groove Agent 1 is the precursor, or kind of the first generation of Groove Agent SE. All right, so you see from Gerald Ely, says, Greg, my Simon Phillips drums won't load into Cubase even though it shows up in the library manager. Should I toss the old and reinstall new? So if you're on 15, or if you have the Groove Agent 6 SE, the latest version, you might have to go to the Steinberg download assistant. That happened to me as well. And when you go to the Steinberg download assistant, you might notice that you have an update for the Simon Phillips kits. Were kind of updated recently. I think all of them were, the 3 different Simon Phillips kits. So when you go over here, you may see updates. So you would see like updates or upgrades. I think it's going to be labeled as updates here, maybe at the top. Make sure that you have all. So right now it just came over here. So I go to my VST sounds. So you can see here I could install the update for my Simon Phillips studio drums. I needed to do it myself. And you could just come right over here and make sure that you do the updates directly there. I'll just get my stuff updated directly here. So you do for the VST sounds, try doing that, and I think that it would come back for you. I think there are some minor changes that needed to happen for the Simon Phillips drums when updating to the Groove Agent 6 SE. All right, we'll let that continue in the background. All right. You see Gerald Ely has received 1 gallon of chocolate mango ice cream. All right. And I see from Gerald Ely, he says, Greg, I did the update from the download assistant. It still won't load into Cubase. So let me know if you see the Groove Agent SE. So if we go to like your VST instruments on the right hand side and you go to Groove Agent, if you see the Simon Phillips kits here, so if you don't see it there, then what you could do is probably go over to make sure you have the latest MediaBay update. So if we just come over here, just do a Google search for Steinberg MediaBay. And now you could just come over here and just try downloading and reinstalling the MediaBay and see if that makes a difference for you. Hang on 1 second, I have to talk to my wife real quick. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, so we see from Delsar Music says, hello, Greg. How do you fix a guitar that is not in tempo with the drums? So there's a lot of stuff you could do, you know, if it's not in tempo at all, or if there's some stuff that's a little bit out here and there. So we'll show you a little bit of both. All right. All right, so let's say if it's a little bit out of time overall, say something along the lines of this. So if we So if we have kind of like parts that are out of time, what you could do is we could just kind of, we want to zoom into a certain amount, and we want to go to what we call our warp tool. And if we click here, we could just say, I want to go to free warp. And then once we're in free warp, so we can see our hit points here. And I may have to just kind of come over to my project, or if I go to my audio menu, we could say we go to real-time processing, and we could say let's create warp markers from hit points. So now I have all of these little yellow lines, and if you don't see them, it could be that you just have to zoom in, otherwise it may just all be yellow lines. So if we wanted to make adjustments, so let's say this here was late. So what we could do is just move, we see this tool, so once we go to our warp tool and we select free warp, at that point I have both of these selected. I can now just have this kind of automatically snap to being on the grid. So if we want to do, you know, both parts simultaneously, I could just come right over here. And now we could just, you know, so if it's a little early or a little late, and we can say, okay, let's adjust just this channel. So as we are kind of working with hit points, we could just adjust these so that we can say, okay, we want these to fall directly on beat. So what we're doing in essence is just kind of time stretching the individual little parts. So if you find that a player is like kind of anticipating the beats a little too much, you can say, oh, I just want this on, you know, right on the downbeat there. Or I want these to be on beat 4. We could just... So we could also just say, let's use our quantized value and let's move it to the and of 4. So anything that you want to kind of tweak. Now, if it is a file that is just like where there are two completely different tempos, like the drums are at 100 beats a minute and the guitar is at, you know, 80 beats a minute, what you could do is just, you know, come over. So let's say we have our file here, and we're currently at 120 beats a minute. If we wanted to add, let's say, like a drum loop or a different audio file with this, so let's say, okay, let's find something, quick beat. All right, so once we know kind of what the tempo of the file is, let me just, you know, if you know kind of if you have the tempo information, and we could look at this in the pool window and just say, okay, you know, we could see that we have our tempo here. So we could say this Afro beat, the rest of these are at 120 beats a minute, but this Afro beat is at 101. So if we could put the tempo there of the file, and then we could place it into musical mode. And once something is in musical mode, you see that this isn't fitting onto the grid as we do this, but once it's in musical mode, that will automatically follow the tempo. So you could, if you assign the tempos and then select the events and place them into musical mode, then like we could have this beat or a guitar part. Now that guitar part or that loop can automatically adjust and stretch to match the current project tempo for you. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Delsar Music. All right, great to see Jeff Zabelski on. Hope you had a great holiday season. All right, Beverly asks, one more, Greg. You can ask as many as you want. So it says, the beat designer setup has changed in Cubase 15. The record button is missing now. How do you get the MIDI notes from the beat designer onto a MIDI track? Okay, so I'll just do a new project here. Okay, so let's load up just a quick instrument track. Okay, so we'll do Groove Agent SE. Okay, so let's come over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do, so I'm going to just, we'll create a quick drum map, and let's get to our beat designer. Okay, so let's say as we want to do this, let's start off with kick, and we'll do a snare. And let's just do a quick hi-hat here. Okay, so right now we have our pattern here inside of Beat Designer, and if we want to do this, if we go to like the little drop down menu here on the far hand right side, we can say let's insert the pattern at the left locator, and now that would, and we have other options here, so we could just say insert the sub bank. We could insert the pattern at the cursor, at the left locator, or fill the loop with the pattern. So you could just do it. So once you have that pattern created, now we have that pattern just directly in our project window. And one other thing you may want to check out is also just kind of using the pattern editor with that, because you can make some great drums. So let's say if I want to, and this is new, came in 14 but was enhanced in version 15. So let's say I wanted to go to Groove Agent SE here. Let's load a quick Beat Agent SE kit. Okay, so, and when you do this, all right, so as we do this, one thing you could do is instead of making a MIDI part, make a pattern event. And now as we load up our kit here, we could go to the pattern editor and say, okay, we want to do drum. We could see all of our different sounds. And at this point, we could just say, okay, while we play, say, okay. And you could just kind of make patterns kind of very easily here. Say we want to do so you could just kind of come over here and program different beats, or you could say let's just have it rhythmically, let's just randomly generate a pattern. So you could do all sorts of cool stuff with the new pattern editor. So if you haven't explored that, we could think of it as kind of a further extension of Beat Designer. But if you're using Beat Designer, the plugin, you want to get those notes in, just go to the upper right hand corner, and then you'll see this little drop down menu, and you could insert at the cursor, fill the loop, or at the left locator. Okay. Okay. Just reading through comments. All right, so we're seeing from Gerald Ely about the Jazzu thinks maybe it's not activated. So, you can install all of your different devices, but if you go to the Steinberg Activation Manager, so first thing to do is when you do this, you may see My Products. All right, so, and then there's All Products. So once you've redeemed the download access code, it'll show up in My Products. So these are all the different aspects, different programs that you have licenses for. You could download and install all these, but we can see separate licenses are required for these. So these generally will show up in My Products once you've purchased a download access code and copied that and activated that. Also make sure, there's also, and generally that will activate it for you, but you could also go into the Steinberg Activation Manager in case it didn't. And then you could just come over here and see if you need to actually activate a particular program. So if you have the license and you purchased the Simon Phillips drums or whatever content or add-on or loops, at that point you could choose to activate it right there. So so check if it's in your not activated list or if it's in your activated list as well. So if you could let us know, Gerald, we could probably help you out some more. See Jeff Sabelski just had surgery at the VA, so hope everything went well. All right, Sold Sound Officials just says, can you explain the chord system in Cubase and is there any way to find chords for different genres and a chord channel? Sometimes it shows 2 keys at the beginning. Is it root and chord? All right, so a lot of times when we're working with different chords, we'll come over here. Let's just say, I think we have some chords. Here, let's take this particular project. All right, so let's say I have a chord track and I want to figure out what the chords are based on this particular guitar part. So I have a guitar part that's playing chords, so I want to figure out what the chord track is. So when I come over here, I'm going to do a quick analysis. And so I drag and drop an audio or a MIDI event to my chord track. And we can see, we see our chords that have been kind of defined or extracted from our audio. So as we come over here, and what we see is kind of the key signature here. So we can see that this is saying, okay, we're probably in the key of A major. So we see, and we also see this little asterisk, and this is indicating that this was not intentionally entered, but it was derived from a particular chord analysis. And we can see, okay, at times it may say, okay, maybe we're switching. This section is maybe perhaps modulating to E major. If you don't think that's the case, you're like, oh, it's all in A major. I don't see a D sharp here, but maybe there is an accidental in one of the chords, like a passing tone, that you could then just kind of come over here and erase, particular chords. But there's also just kind of a show scales option, so you could just simply have it indicated right there. Now there isn't necessarily, if we were entering in chords, and a lot of times, chords aren't genre specific. You may have patterns like blues is often going to be like a 1, 4, 5. That's a typical blues chord progression. A lot of jazz chord progressions may be a 2, 5, 1, like a minor 2, major 5, major 1. Some will just go around a circle of fifths. But if you want to, so let's say if we're putting some chords in. Let's say, okay, I want to go to F major. Let's come over here. I want to go to B flat. And I know I want to end on a C chord. But I don't know what is a good chord. And I tend not to think of chord progressions as being, this is a hip hop chord progression. Chord progressions can work for any style of music, just like a good song could be done as, a techno song, a country song, an R&B version, or a string quartet. So let's say if we're looking at this and we want to look for a particular chord, we could actually just double click on a chord that's not defined, and we could go to the scale assistant or to the chord assistant. So here we could base this based on kind of common notes. So we could say, okay, when we want to come to our chord assistant, we want to take into account the previous and the next chord. So we could say, okay, looking at this, okay, we could do B flat minor, we could do G minor chord. These are good chord suggestions. We could also go to a different like proximity. So we can see, if we're in this chord going from B flat to C, we could say, okay, I want to see like visually these chords are closer harmonically as we go around. We could also see it as a circle of fifths, which is another common chord progression, and this is often used for jazz, or maybe you kind of go on a circle of fifths and then you do a turnaround to get back to what they call the head, kind of the beginning of the song. So here you could just kind of choose a circle of fifths, and you could choose whether you wanted that to be kind of, based on major or minor chords, because that could change. So a couple of different ways of being able to find kind of new and exciting chords that maybe you wouldn't otherwise utilize. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so you see from Gerald Ely, says, Greg, I updated MediaBay and Simon Phillips still doesn't show up. Let me know if it shows up in your activation manager and if you purchased the Simon Phillips library as well. And all right, great to see Randy Lee on. Hope you're doing well. Happy New Year. And he's received 1 gallon of peach mango ice cream. Alright, so my chat field jumped. Alright, so we see from Beverly, just says, Greg, I was using Beat Designer with the synth, not drums, and creating bass sounds with swing on them. Yeah, and that's another thing that you could do in, if you're, if you have 15, check out, like, there's a lot of super cool stuff that you could do in. So let's come over here. I'll just add quick. It's Retrolog. Or let me add that. Okay, so we have it with the pattern event. Okay, so when we come here, and there's probably some like significant advantages of when you go to the pattern mode, we could select kind of a melodic pattern. So let's say I want this to be I'll just find all right, so we can come here. All right, so what's kind of cool about this is now there's in 15, if you have 15, there's a whole kind of melodic mode. So we could say, okay, I want this to be in the key of D major. So now I could just kind of, as I come over here, and we'll just click on the play. So we could just kind of program, different, you could just come over here and program kind of melodic elements. And if you want to tie these together, we could do that. But, it's great stuff. If you want it to be monophonic or polyphonic, you could have swing on, so if you wanted to come over here, you could say, okay, I just want to create different shapes. Let me change the oscillator octave here. So I just want to. So if you wanted to just kind of program some different types of melodic patterns, and then even again, so you could have it generate steps, you get to chord lanes, you can come over here, tie the similar notes together, you could add swings, so all sorts of cool stuff that you could do with the pattern editor right there as well. So check that out if you have 15. All right, great to see Lawrence from Barn Door Recording checking in. All right, we see Peter joining from Montreal, Canada. Says the cold spell is finally broken. It's plus 3 degrees centigrade today, but it's raining cat and dogs. So. All right, so we have BK Hawaii joining us. Wishing us a happy new year in Hawaii. You see, I have a couple friends in Hawaii on vacation, which I'm jealous of. All right, so Chris Higginson asks, hi Greg, what is the best way to calculate MIDI offset delay for orchestral instruments such as SSO and Iconica section players that sound in time with the grid? So probably if you're doing something like really fast, so let's say if we come over here, let's add an instrument track. And let me just switch that instrument. Sorry. All right, so let's put in like maybe more. All right, so I'll just kind of put some stuff in step entry. We'll just do a quick phrase here. All right, so let's just. All right, so let's say if we're have kind of an orchestral thing and you realize that and let's say, like, depending upon the articulation, So one of the things that you could do is actually, if you find that the whole instrument has kind of an like all of the particular sounds that you're using have are falling behind a grid, you could just come over here and then there is a delay. So and you could just kind of play it and listen to the number of milliseconds that it takes. So again, once you kind of select the particular event, you could adjust the delay time here. Now, often if you're doing orchestral stuff, because a lot of times the publishers don't, so you have to kind of often, because depending on the register of the instrument, it might be low, or some instruments that are more legato may take longer. So if you're kind of in a scenario where, okay, we want to come over here, we could go into the expression map. So I will just come over here. Let's just add an expression map. I'm going to import the key switches. And if you find that one articulation is slower than others, if you come over here and select the articulation, you could have the attack compensation, and you could just simply kind of come over here and it's really just kind of listening to it, because unfortunately a lot of developers don't really publish, and it could be different depending on your sample rate and different conditions of your studio. So now each articulation could have its own separate kind of track pre-delay, so that everything will work. But there's no kind of automatic answer. You just kind of have to play it and adjust and find the values, and then you could save those within the track preset or save it within your template so you don't have to worry about it. All right, Balsa asks, says, can you explain how exporting mixed stems, kick plus snare work when tracks are grouped and have group processing like compression that is based on the summed input sound and not the individual track? All right, so when we do an export audio mixdown, and we often see this. So when we're doing a single component, that would go through kind of the entire mix. But if we have, let's say, we have these instruments, maybe we're doing kind of an orchestral thing. So as soon as we have multiple selected here we could have our effects options. So if we don't want any of the effects, we want it like all of everything to be dry, because we're handing it off to someone else to mix and where they could put their effects. We could just have it everything rendered disabled without effect processing. We could choose to have our inserts and channel strips. So maybe we want EQs and compressors, but we want someone else to have control over the reverb. Now, if we choose groups plus sends, now all of the tracks, as we render the individual files, will go through and include all of the group processing and our sends. And if we want to also go one step further, we could say we want to have the master plus the groups plus the inserts. So those are the three options, and they become available when you do kind of the multi-export. So this way, if you have multiple drum tracks and there's a group compression and you want to render them as stems, you could render them without the group compression or with the group compression applied to each of the files, so that it is rendered as you hear it with the compression applied on the group. Let's see, Jazz Dude just says the dongle is so easy, just saying. So a lot of times with this, it's, people would download a bunch of software that they didn't own before the dongle, when the dongle was around as well. All right, so we see from Gerald Ely says, just follow up. I was logged into Activation Manager. I deactivated and reactivated it in Download Manager. It says it's installed. There are no updates listed. So also check just to make sure, Gerald, when you go to MediaBay. So let's come over here to MediaBay, and you'll go to VST Sounds. Make sure that when you go to like your Simon Phillips kits, like if you see it look like this, you may have to just kind of place a little check, just to the left of particular. So let's say, okay, I want to go to Sounds of Soul. That you could, some of these I don't have licenses for, but at this point, make sure, like when you go into, directly into like your Simon Phillips kits, make sure that they're checked here as well. So just make sure that those are checked, because if you choose to uncheck and it looks kind of like this, at that point, you may have to just make sure that the MediaBay and that we on the left hand side go under VST Sound, and then make sure that all of the kits that you expect to see, that they have a little check mark just to the left of them. Otherwise, MediaBay may not allow you to see the particular library. Okay. All right, Balsa asks, when mixing, is it possible to solo a track but still hear all of the send effects, sidechain tracks that affect that solo track? Solo button also mutes all the mentioned tracks. All right. All right, so let's come over here. Let me revert. All right, so let's say I want to take my guitar part here.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach.
So here when I'm soloing the track, so let's come over here, let's go to like our reverb that we have. So all right, so as we play, so if I have the reverb on,
your heart, my breath while you called me to. Well, even now I'm so in love with you, just like a long haul.
All right, so here we have the effects as it's soloed. Let me try a quick side chain on that. So let me side chain the guitar part. So let's say we're listening to this.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time
So we hear the reverb on the guitar, but let's go ahead and let me just add a compressor on the guitar here. All right, so let's go to our dynamics. Okay, so let's.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my breath while you called me too. With you.
So here we can hear the guitar.
Like a long, long time ago.
Let me see if I send to pre-fader, if that does a trick. So the reverb is coming through, but the sidechain isn't when the guitar isn't.
Do you recall the day? In the school parking lot.
Yeah, for the sidechain, it's still what I probably could do is
Long time ago. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting.
all right. So you hear the reverb, but if I did it maybe as a group, so when we're doing the sidechain, let's open this up. Let's go to maybe the direct routing, and let's see if we do the sidechain from direct routing. Let's see if we could do that. Yeah, so let's say the sidechain input. So now we're going to send the sidechain.
It was 7th grade in the school parking lot.
Looks like the sidechain still needs to be present for it to take in, to be used, to be heard. So it still needs to be there. Let me just make sure I have this.
On our yellow coach to ferry us home. You looked my way and your heart shone through. It caught my.
Yeah, so we could hear the reverb when it's soloed, but we still need to hear the other source that's driving the sidechain. So. All right. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. You see reminiscent comments about the color of dongles. Sorry. All right, Flyv says I'm missing some of Steinberg's drum machine presets. Where can I get those default presets. So make sure when you go over here to like the MediaBay, so there's kind of like two different levels of presets. So let's say if you come over here to presets, you can see kind of new ones. So, you know, there's new sets that came in 15. So let's say if we wanted to go to track presets to drum. So these are, you know, so there are some additional presets that came in 15. So there was kind of a separate bank. And then you could also, you know, get those from, so you could just come over here to the different, and let's see if we go, I think if we click here, so, you know, make sure that if you have 15, that's going to give you more sounds with it. So you'll see kind of when you go to, like MediaBay in general, you'll see like, you know, drum machine presets 1, drum machine presets 2, and these may be as track presets. So let's say if we go to, you know, presets, track presets, and then there's also going to be pattern presets. So you can see we go to like the pattern editor, but you know, 15 did add a series of new drum machine presets. Okay. All right, Balsa asks, in the control room's inserts, what are the orange colored effects? Understand the pre-post fader difference in the tracks channel setting, but don't understand how that transfers to the control room inserts. All right, so let's see if I can activate my control room. Let's come over here to inserts. All right, so say if we come over here. So mine are all kind of the same color. And let's see so I don't see kind of a pre or post. Let me just, the orange colored effect. So maybe the orange ones may be post fader. So let's say if we go to a post fader slot, so if we come over here, so yeah, so these will be, you know, post fader for, you know, if you wanted to, so let's say we want like our dithering to not have any impact here. So that's why, so a lot of times it could be used for dithering so that the control room isn't feeding directly, you know, the level of the control room isn't affecting that. So similar concept there. All right, so David M says he's going free warping all night tonight. Glad of the recap on that. Okay, so we see from Soul Sound Officials, this is our question, when writing a melody in the MIDI editor, is there a way to see the chords on the background or melody to be able to see it while typing in the new MIDI infos? Okay. All right, so let's say if we have a chord track here. All right, so I'll take this, and we're going to have a chord track. I go into my MIDI editor. So let's say if we're in our full screen MIDI editor here. So here we could see kind of our chord pads directly from the project window. If we're full screen, we could go to global tracks and show the chords directly at the top. So as we go to write in and we're in full screen mode with the MIDI editor, we could see all of the particular chords right here. So you just want to go to the global tracks, and if you have like the tempo track, if you want to see that, and the chord track, you can now just come right over there and see the chords right in there. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so you see from Beverly, just says, it's awesome. Thanks for a demo and a pattern designer. Absolutely better in Beat Designer. Love the colors too instead of red for the original GUI. All right, so Jeff Sabelski says he was Smasher number 50. All right, Gerald Ely says the attack compensation inside the expression map is the tip of the day. All right, so you see Val says, oh, nice, the stream's running again. Yeah, sorry, we had technical problems. I'll have to play around with it tonight. I'm sure I'm one mouse click away from happiness. See, Gerald Ely just says some composers have listed the delays they found for particular string libraries online. Yeah, it's all kind of people asking Native Instruments for. Let me see, Jazz Dude was kind enough to post. All right, Drowsy Eternal asks, hey Greg, how can I edit gain in one certain spot on multiple events at the same time with the pencil tool, if possible? All right. All right, so let me just, multiple events. All right, so let's say if I'm here, all right, so let's say one of the things you could do, let's say you just have like one hit here or one little section. If we used a range tool and say, okay, I want to, and I have snap on, but we can make this like much smaller. So if I turn my snap off by hitting the letter J, I could say, okay, let's just take just this little portion right here. So now what I can do, I have selected like a whole series of like, I want this one hit to all be louder or softer. So as I come over here, we'll just go to the middle, and now I could increase or decrease the gain of all of the selected range across multiple events at once. So again, just kind of come over here, say, okay, I want all my drums to be beefed up for this one hit, or they're too loud. Just kind of go to the top center area. You'll see the cursor will change to kind of two triangles pointing upward and downward, and then you could just increase or decrease. All right, you see Tim K is going to join us next time. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Soren says there's a mess with my drum libraries. There seems to be doubles in. And then one of my own patches are, and then other factory patches are. But I just found out about it, Greg. What to do with doubles? So if you could, if you have double files, you could, if you go to MediaBay, you could just probably just tell it to ignore or to not look in full. Probably all the doubles may be in a similar folder. But let's come over here to MediaBay quickly. All right, so let's say, so I would probably go to MediaBay, and if you want to send me a picture of your MediaBay, like let's say if you go to, if you come over here, you're looking for, let's say, plug-in presets, and let's say shuffle, or whatever you have. So now we search for shuffle. So here you might be able to find the particular folder and see if there's a folder that you could just have MediaBay not search. So just kind of going into like your hard drive and saying this folder is where duplicate drum files go, and then just tell Cubase not to search in that duplicated folder. So let me know if you see that they're kind of common, your duplicates are kind of in the same folder. You could also, if you say, okay, this is one that I need to work with, you could also just, most of the time, if it's like an audio file or user preset, you could just say, show in Finder, show in Explorer as well. But I would kind of see if you could find a particular folder and have MediaBay just ignore it. All right. All right, so we see from Val, says, Greg, are there already any news on the UAD software and the comp ability within Cubase 15? I can use it through the built-in, but since the last update, Cubase 15 Pro, it doesn't see the ASIO, or maybe it's the compatibility, like the UAD ASIO, which I need. So I haven't heard of anything of it. Usually the ASIO driver is automatically going to work as expected. I assume, I'm not sure if you're running Mac or Windows, so if it doesn't see the ASIO driver, maybe if you're on, let me know if you're on Mac or Windows, but usually that's once it's kind of installed, 14 and 15 or 12, 13 shouldn't have any difference how it looks at your audio interface. So, but I haven't heard that, and we'd probably hear from lots of Apollo users if their Apollo wasn't being seen. I see Peter wishing Tim K a safe weekend. All right, so we see Gerald Ely says, Greg, success. I opened a file browser for Simon Phillips, and Simon Phillips has checked it, unchecked it, rechecked it, and after Cubase reboot, Simon is back. Thanks, Greg. You rock. See, it wasn't the e-licenser. All right, and we see from Soren, says not really Cubase related, but music production related. I hope you say you're worried about it, Greg. I've made a song and I'm happy about it, but I've gotten feedback on it from a song coach. Let's see if there's. I see continued. Yeah, if you want to share your song with me, I'd be happy to take a listen to it and give feedback if you want. All right, so we see Randy Lee says got to bounce. He has his doctor's appointment. Great day to everyone. So have a good appointment, and thanks for joining us and spending part of your Friday afternoon with us. See Jeff Sabelski just said time signature explained very well. Greg could read a Stravinsky score and more. I've had a lot of practice. Usually the orchestra I play in, we do a lot of contemporary pieces, and some of them will be like every 2 or 3 measures changing meter. So it's always fun. And we just did some Copelands. That's always good for subdivisions and time signatures that are written versus what it actually feels like, as you probably know from if you played, for those of us that have played Copeland. All right, so we see Soul Sound Officials. This question, I think I had the same issues related to the UAD driver. I can't load the control panel to set the buffer size from Cubase. Never worked for me. I have to do it outside of Cubase. Why? So some audio interfaces, Motu was kind of notorious for this. Wouldn't allow you to change the buffer size, wouldn't allow the control panel to be accessed from a host application, only from its internal application. So there are some audio interfaces that you have to go outside of Cubase or your host program to adjust the buffer, and it's a decision that the audio interface company has made. All right, so we see I'm running Windows 11, but already did most of the recommended troubleshooting, but only Cubase. Can't find the UAD USB-C ASIO. So it says, you're right, only found 2 other people online that had the same problem, especially with Apollo USB, not Thunderbolt. Check to make sure, like sometimes power, and if you want, I'd be happy to take a remote look at your system like next week if you have some free time. I'm kind of based on US East Coast time, but I'd be happy to remotely look at your system over Zoom or a screen sharing application if that works for you. All right, wonderful to see Tiago joining from Brazil. Glad you can make it today. All right, we see Vince doing some shopping with his parents. Have a great time with your parents. Always good to spend time with your parents. All right, we see Sable has feedback on her new Atom audio monitors that she wants to share with the Button Man. All right, so you see Soul Sound Official just says I can open up the control panel from my UA Volt 876 from within Cubase 14 Pro. So it could be just the design. Maybe one interface is made by Universal Audio and the software is done by Universal Audio. Maybe one interface is done by another company. Who knows? All right, so we see Val just says, thanks, Greg. Get in touch with you through email. Great for you to offer your help. So, yeah, I'm always willing to help people. See Val is asking who the Button Man is. So, with everyone's new handles, it's Michael Pierce. So, all right, so we see Peter is just mentioned he has no issue changing sample rate, for example. So, usually the sample rate can be different because it's kind of, if it's set up to switch sample rates, but some interfaces you can't change buffers. All right, Soul Sound Official says, can we see mid and side signal and SuperVision like span plugin, and like setting another channel on the audio channel EQ to see them on top of each other? Right. All right. All All right, so let's say I just want to come here. Let me just put this on. All right, so let's get to our analyzer. Let's get to SuperVision. All right, so let's say, okay. Just disable my control room real quick. Okay, so let me just come over here. Since I All right, so let's come over here to SuperVision. All right, so if we come over here, we could say, okay, I want to see stereo mid-side. So just about all of the different functions. And let's say if I want to add another plugin, so here I can see mid-side and left-right. So we could, you know, just come over here. So let's say, okay, here we want to see our mid-side. Here we're seeing left and right simultaneously. And if we do this for so let's say we want to do spectrum bar on both. And let's say the top one, we could do mid, side, or we could just do the middle, or just sides. So you could have, you know, most of the plugins, if you come over here, you could pick and choose whether it's going to be mid-side for just about, for the vast majority of plugins where it's applicable. So, and if you want to see like another channel like on top of each other, so let's say if I want to look at maybe the bass part here, so we do have side, so say I want to add a third spectrum bar. So let's say I want to look at the bass as a side chain. So I think if we come over here, we can now do the stereo side chain. That's just make sure my bass is sending out. So now This is just the bass that's feeding into the sidechain of the meter. Plus we could have our stereo main. And let's say for the top, I want this to be my stereo mid side. This is the main, and this is the mix down of the sidechain input, which I did the sidechain for the bass. So that way we could have a lot of flexibility with different metering options. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right. All right. Reading through comments. Yeah, so we see Soul Sound Official. Yeah, so, check with Universal Audio and see if they have a design decision, but it's really up to them if it works or not. Okay. All right, just quick. So we see, hi Greg, is it possible to save a Cubase template to an external drive such as an SSD or USB flash drive? So the template is always going to be recalled. It's going to go into a specific location so that Cubase knows to look for the template. If you are to the point where you wanted to transfer a template, like by putting on like an SD card or USB drive, what you can do is if we come over here, let's just go to your hub. And at this point, when we see our templates, you could say, okay, I want to come right over here and say this is, let's just open templates. Here, I'll just create and save one here. So we'll save as template. Let's say January 9th, 2026. But if you right click on the template, you just if you right click on the template, you could just say reveal show in Finder or show in Explorer, and that will take you to like the templates folder. So the template is always going to be stored kind of on the root level so that Cubase always knows to go there, so that your templates are always available. So it's going to look into a known location, but if you just see the template and you wanted to copy to move it to a different computer or email it to someone, at that point you could just right click on the template and show in Explorer or Finder. All right, we see from Uno Mementos is, could you please explain how to make a reference track via Control Room? This is one of those things I never remember. All right. So my control room is acting up today, so you may not hear it, but I'll go through the process for you. Okay, so what we want to do is we'll first enable our control room. So we're going to go to the audio connections and enable it here. All right. And we want to make sure that we have a Q mix. So we're going to add a Q, and we'll just call this Q mix like reference. Okay, so let's say this is my reference track here. What I would do is choose for this to not have any output bus. So we go to the routing. I'm going to choose no bus. And when we go to, let's say, our channel settings, so if you want to go to the channel settings, so we want this particular channel to be routed to no target, no bus. And I'm going to just come right over here and set, when we come to our sends, we'll see our Q sends, and I'm going to just come right over here and then just turn this on right over here. So when we do this, this is going to be sent out at 0 dB. All right. Okay, and then once we're in the control room, we just want to switch between our mix and let's say Q mix 3. So this would be the reference, and then this would be our mix level directly there. So at that point, we just want to be able to switch between kind of our different reference points. So if I'm doing this, now if I want to listen to Q3, so we could just, so let's say on this particular reference, I'm going to put a nasty EQ on it. So that's our reference. This is our mix, and you could just toggle kind of back and forth between them. So so we want to make sure that this isn't going to the master bus, so send it to no target, create an effect, create a Q send, and then at that point just simply send it to that Q mix and then toggle back and forth between. So this way that track is not going through any of your master processing. All right. Okay, good. Gareth is just reminding people to sweeten the like. Okay. Soul Sound Official says to save a routing signal like audio track effects and group with its process. Could you remind me how to save that, and also saving a file, a plugin chain only too? Thanks. Okay. Okay, so let's say I have an audio track. On this audio track, I will have a couple inserts. Okay, on this track, I want to add an effects channel. And I want this to go to a group as well. So we're going to add a group track. Okay, so let's say I want to go to this particular track. I have my inserts here. So if I just kind of right click, we could save it an effects chain preset. So we'll call this January 9th, 2026. And so now if I add another audio track, and I come over here, I could right click, let's load an effects chain preset. I want to January 9th, 2026, all those plugins. Now if I want to save all these tracks with all of their routing, I'm going to just select the shift key, and then what we could do is choose to export selected tracks. All right. We'll call this, I'll put on my desktop. Let's go to new folder. I'll just okay, and so now if we want to do that, we could just now import a track archive. And as we do this, I'll open it up. We'll select all the tracks, hit OK, and then all of my audio track with its routing to my send, routing to the group is automatically carried over. So you could select the tracks with all the routing, save it as export to selected tracks, and then import it as a track archive and right click on the inserts to load the effects chain preset. I'll get my monitoring computer back here. All right. See, Chris Higginson says, great, thanks, Greg, for saving the template info. So you're welcome. All right, so a question, what is the difference between a template and a regular .cpr except from its location? Generally, if you do a template isn't associated with a particular path. So if we have a regular Cubase project and we record audio in there, it's going to go into that project's folder. And that project has a kind of a file hierarchy. So it'll, if you do a mixdown, it'll have a mixdown folder. It will have an audio folder like ready for you. But a template, it doesn't have a folder associated with that particular project. So it's kind of the location of where the media goes into your template has to be defined. So where a project has that definition already set when a project is created. So the template is like the location of media such as audio and processing is, kind of agnostic, if you will. So you have to physically define that location. So in essence, a template is, basically a CPR file without, think of it maybe being homeless, where it doesn't have a folder structure of where to put files until you tell it to. So that's really the main difference. All right, wonderful to see Pablo on. All right, Val asks, is there a plugin in Cubase that does multi-band splitting to be able to treat highs and lows differently? So there's one way to do it. It may not split it to do like different processing necessarily, but what you can do is just to, one of the plugins I like, if I wanted to process like a specific range in an audio file, you could come over here. Like one of the plugins I use for that, like if I is just coming over here and we go to, let's say it's going to be the, like the stereo enhancer. No, what's the name of the one I'm thinking of? Sorry. Name is escaping me. Oh, Imager. So here you could, set a different bands. So you can say, okay, I only want to process in this particular frequency range. So at this point, we could just so let's say if we want to come over here, so let's activate more bands, and then I could say let's solo this particular band, and then we could do this will only pass the frequencies that are within the band that we specify. So it may not say these low frequencies go to a different source, these frequencies can be have a different processing chain, but if we only wanted to process audio in specific ranges, within specific frequency ranges, we could do that, but it may not split it per se. Everyone's happy that Pablo has made it. All right, Pablo's looking for Mr. Teams as the ice cream man. Let's see, Pablo doesn't remember some of his questions. All right, we see Gerald Ely has to take off. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hope you're doing well. All right, we see Jazzy Lamel joining. So great to see you on. Okay, reading through comments. Ooh, Michael Teams has new ice cream flavors today, starting off 2026 with a bang. So you're missed on the last live stream. Hope you had a great vacation. All right, John Barry just says, just thought, how about a virtual stream deck inside of Cubase? Yeah, I've kind of asked for that over the years. I will kind of go for it again. And kind of speaking of that, I know people on the last live stream wanted to see kind of like how I had set up my stream deck. I kind of updated it this week for Cubase 15. I'll show you kind of what I've been working on. I'm going to show Steinberg at the NAMM show in a couple weeks. But let me go ahead. All right, so one of the things you can do with the Stream Deck is there's a free plugin for Stream Deck where you could take each of the particular buttons and turn the buttons into to transmit MIDI notes. So I made kind of a basic template of 128 MIDI notes to start with, and I created kind of multiple scenarios, and we'll call these are mapping pages that are all kind of done inside of the Cubase MIDI remote. So if you wanted to have like particular menus, but there's also, like I called it, advanced features, automation, plugins, audio menu. So if you want to see everything that's in the MIDI menu, all the different break-offs, you want to go to Vary Audio, you want to go to Preferences, Visibility, Scoring, Quantizing, all these different things. So I'm going to go ahead I have it set up so that we could switch on the Stream Deck. I'll open up the Stream Deck software so you can kind of see, and this is what I've been working on, and I kind of showed it before. One of the things I felt that having a series of 14,000 icons that you didn't know what the icons meant wasn't very useful. So when I come over here, I have kind of an opening page. So you can say, okay, I want to open the hub. I want to add track. So when I see a button here that has like 5 dots. This indicates that there's additional functionality underneath this particular button. So this is like a folder. So if I want to add a track, I could click on add track and say, okay, I want to add a track, add an audio track, add a mono track. Let's add a drum track, a sampler track. So I could just come right over there, add that. And then I even have, like, a lot of times, depending on the different scene you're in, I could just say, okay, we're going to hit enter. And then we could just simply add that particular track just because we have the enter key here. So I'm going to jump back. So if we go back, I want to go to, let's say, the Cubase. So I have my transport control here. And a lot of stuff that you'd want to do on the main window of being able to access your different tools. But let's say if I click on the Cubase menus, I can now come over here and say, okay, let's go to the file menu. So as I do this, these are all of the different functions that are in the file menu. So we could say, okay, I want to do a new project. I want to do new from library. I want to open a library, close, save as, all these different elements that we see in the file menu. So let's go back, and I want to see, let's go to our project menu. So now I'll click on the project menu. All of our project menu functions are laid out for us here. So let's say, okay, I want to do my project preview. So I could just come right over here. Here's the 3 options that we see that break off in our project menu to project preview. So they're addressable. I could go back. We're at my project menu. So I want to go to my signature track. So we see that when we come over here to the signature track, all of this is available so that you could simply go right back. And let's jump back to our Cubase menus. Let's go to, let's say, our studio menu. So I hit my studio menu, and again, all of my freeze, unfreeze, all my different edit functions, everything could be just kind of laid out for me right here. So I want to go to my audio connections, my mix console, so my performance meter. We see the more options. So if I want to open up like my max record time or my time display, close that. So all of the Cubase menus, and there's a definite logic to the menu structure, but I also created something called advanced features. And if we see this, we notice that my MIDI remote, when I come over here, so let's say we will come back to our default location. So I go to my advanced, I click on advanced. This switches the mapping page to advanced features. So when I look at it here, here's all the advanced features. So let's say I want to get into like all the quantizing functions. So this will be kind of focused for particular types of workflow. So when I go to quantize, now I can see my quantize value. I could switch to dotted to triplet. I could quantize the event ends, lengths. I could freeze MIDI quantize. I could fix lengths. So all the stuff that you kind of go menu hunting for often. I want to open up my quantize panel. All this stuff is like very easy to access. We'll show you the zoom settings. So kind of all of the different zoom options. So you don't, again, have to go kind of hunting constantly. Let's look at automation. So you want to switch to all of the automation modes that are available. So let's go to the fill options. We'll jump back. Let's take a look at the transport menu. So again, we'll have some icons where it makes kind of obvious sense for like play, record. But, if we wanted to use pre-roll, I could just turn that on. Let's use pre-roll, post-roll. So all of these different transport functions are going to be available. One of them that I'd set up was project zone. So I want to hide the lower zone, hide the right zone, hide the channel inspector, the inspector. I want to be able to go to the next tab, so kind of like project window navigation. Preferences. So now all the preferences will be organized. If you want to go to your audio preferences, you could turn on and off different preferences for plugins, for your tools. So again, all your preferences available in one spot. I had a mode set up for like I'm doing tracking and recording. So here I could add tracks. I could name the next track. I could record enable, monitor enable. I could switch my monitoring modes. I could turn on and off delay compensation, solo mute, listen. I could duplicate track without data, punch in, punch out, set the punch in, undo. So if you're just recording someone, all the functions that you would need kind of in one space for like quickly recording and tracking someone. So let's come over here and say, okay. So some of the other advanced features. So if you want to go to vary audio, so I want to move the pitch up, I want to move it down, I want to zoom in and out, I want to reset, I want to undo, stop play, I could nudge back a measure, so I want to reset the warp, I want to convert to MIDI, all of those functions there. And again, we could just say, okay, we'll come to, let's say, advanced features again. I want to go to my scoring, so I could put in like different rhythmic values here, like flip the stems. So my control room functionality, so I could switch back and forth between my control room. I want to go to my pattern editor. So let's, add every second step, every third step. I want to go to the selected channel. So here I could record enable. I could open up the channel strip. I could turn it off and on and off different things. I could open up particular inserts. So lots of cool stuff that you could do. So, if you want to go to your pool, MediaBay, go to all of the mixer settings here. So if you want to navigate between different mixers, if you wanted to change your metering types, if you wanted to bypass particular types of channels. So this is what I've been kind of working on. I think I have it now where it will translate over to Windows with the fonts. But so just give me an idea like what you guys think of this. And this is kind of using the 32 pad Stream Deck. But but everything is kind of always, switching between all of these different mapping pages for the Elgato, so that when you hit the button, it will switch to mapping page as well as the Stream Deck profile. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll be kind of showing it to some of the Steinberg people at the NAMM show in a couple weeks as well. All right. But yeah, John Barry, thanks for asking about the virtual Stream Deck type of solution. All right. All right, so we see Sable is just saying, Greg, can you export that for Cubase functions? So let me know. Yeah, I mean, pretty much, all these can be assigned to different functions as well, but it's all Elgato stuff. All right, so we see from Val, it says NAMM's already around the corner. So Michael Teams liked it. Yeah, and I wanted something, because one of my kind of design intentions with it was, there's always so many functions in Cubase that are great that, don't have a keyboard shortcut assigned to them. There's only like so many possible like modifiers that you could use. So I wanted to like have quick access where you could pretty much get to anywhere within like 3 or 4 button pushes to just about anywhere in the program. So that was kind of my intention, so that they were all accessible, because I think there's lots of great features that are there that people don't use because maybe they have to assign a keyboard shortcut, or they have to go into a preference and search the preferences for that. So. All right, so we see Jazz Dude says no hangout at NAMM the 19th and probably also the 16th, or the 19th and the 22nd, because I'll be doing setup on the 19th and the show will be going on the 22nd. So, all right. So Soul Sound Official says, so basically how many functions can you assign to the Stream Deck? So it's all kind of virtual, like when we're working with it here, it's all, it's really, like each button could go to, there's nested folders within, you could have nested folders within nested folders. I kind of started off with 128 parameters per mapping page just to kind of get that working. Some of the mapping pages may have more than 128 parameters. But so you could have a tremendous amount, and and one of the things I kind of, I'm not a graphics designer, as you probably noticed from my horrible graphics that I did, but I just wanted it to be very text based so that you could look at it and kind of understand and not have to decipher what a particular icon is intended to do. So you could kind of have, 100, you could have like 32, 30, you could have 31 functions within a folder, and each one of these, so if you do the permutation of, 32, so you could have a tremendous amount of functions here. So this is probably a couple of thousand that I did. I haven't counted it up. But I think it's probably a couple thousand controls I have for Cubase done in the Stream Deck. All right, let's see if there's other questions. Yeah, so I think I have just about almost every single keyboard shortcut or keyboard addressable function in Cubase kind of mapped to the Stream Deck here. All right, let's see if there's other questions that kind of pop in. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. Sorry for the audio problems earlier. It's my problem. All right, great to see Capital Razor on. All right, so we see from Soul Sound Official, this isn't our question related to the chords earlier. Can you explain more about how the chords can work for every genre? This can be a debate. To me, like some, I would say blues is going to have specific chord progressions. You could say, there's heavy metal. You may, like Metallica is really fond of using Phrygian mode, but so when I think of chords tied to specific genres, I think of blues because a lot of that's 1-4-5 stuff. A lot of jazz, as I mentioned, is like a minor 2-5-1, or just kind of cycling through a circle of fifths until you do a turnaround to get back to the home chord. But I don't really personally, I don't really think of, there's, like I see the same chord progressions being used in multiple genres. So like, a typical 1-4-6, or, type of chord progression is used in a million songs. It could be used in, going from Bach to the Beatles to Taylor Swift to, to the Rolling Stones to Pink Floyd, so certain chords with common chord tones lead themselves to that. So I don't think there's a great answer for how every chords can work for every genre or genre specific. I think chord progressions are good in a country song, in a smooth jazz song, in a hip hop song, whatever. So. All right, Chris Higginson, thanks for the feedback. Says, I hope Steinberg take this on board. Be more than happy to pay for this. Sable says the Stream Deck is super motivating. All right. All right, so it looks like we are out of questions. See if there's any more that pop in. If not, we'll wrap up. See, John Barry says he had to do it. Finally did a little Bond theme over Christmas to honor my namesake. Yeah, I have a friend who's working on, I think, the next James Bond movie score. So I've been helping him and another guy who I've met who's working on it together. So they said they might fly me over to Abbey Road when they're doing the score. So hope that happens. It'd be a lot of fun. All right, so it looks like we are out of time. Sorry for the audio difficulties earlier. We'll have it all together for next time, but I want everyone to stay safe and healthy over the weekend, and we'll see everyone back on Tuesday. We'll have a full week of live streams next week. The week after will be NAMM, so I won't be doing live streams. And then I'll be home for a couple days, so I'll do probably that following Tuesday. I'll be in town, but that following Friday, so it could be the 29th, I think I have to do a speaking engagement in Columbus, Ohio. So we may just have, after next week, one live stream, and then I think I have one trip in February, but we should have the rest of February kind of all set. So with that, I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. And everyone, please look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday's live stream. Have a great weekend, and goodbye.